Hello, everybody. It's meteorologist Jacob Campbell here with the WeatherNow forecast. So today we're going to be talking about a weather event that a lot of you have probably heard about already. Videos have been going up all over YouTube about it, and it is the most recent winter storm that's going to be hitting North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, parts of Kansas, parts of Colorado, as well as parts of Minnesota. And so a lot of people online have been calling this a potential blizzard. And I honestly, right now, think that at least for the next 72 hours, this being a blizzard is very unlikely. I would say there's a low chance of that happening as of right now. But we're going to take a look, and it's this low pressure right here that's sitting right over the Rockies at the moment. Well, not at the moment. This is this is Friday at 15Z. So it's this low pressure right here that we're going to be looking at. And proceeding forward, this system will start to organize with a defined cold and a warm front kind of ahead of it. Um, and then it will push to the south and kind of split. So there will be more of that occluded front to the north of it, with a smaller area of low pressure kind of developing here in the north of this low pressure. And a clear warm front pushing down to the south. And so with this, in this kind of warm sector pushing into cold sector of this system, there's a lot of freezing rain. And that's the first real issue that I want to talk about, is the freezing rain. I've put together this ice storm warning outlook map for the next 72 hours. There is I'm calling this a low risk, which basically means it's unlikely that you're going to get put into an ice storm warning. Just because you need at least, and the definition of it is you need at least half an inch of ice to fall in order for that to really be called an ice storm. And so in these areas shaded, you guys are going to get some ice, but it's unlikely that you're going to get anywhere near half an inch of ice. A lot of these areas are going to see 0.1 inches up to a quarter of an inch of ice, but no more than that. Once we get into these more pink regions here, and less like this grayish pink, this is a medium risk. And so that means that conditions are going to be more favorable for you guys to be put into an ice storm warning, meaning once again you get half an inch of ice, which typically comes in the form of freezing rain, because that's basically it's liquid rain that hits the surface and then freezes upon impact, which can cause some serious problems. A lot of these areas are seeing between, on the models, a quarter of an inch and half an inch of ice. And then the areas that I have hashed right here, and also a bit of a more hot pink, are areas that I'm calling high risk for ice storm warnings. And that means that it's more than likely that you guys are going to see an ice storm warning, due to the fact that you guys are forecast between about 0.4 inches and 0.6 inches of ice. So if you live in these areas, especially here in central Nebraska, and then southeastern Minnesota, and parts of north central and northwestern Wisconsin, you guys are in that little high risk area for an ice storm warning. And I want to make it clear, I'm in no way affiliated with the National Weather Service, so definitely go to their website at weather.gov to see if you guys are in that ice storm warning. You'll usually get about I believe a 30-hour lead time on that. And so we are still about a day and a half away from that. And that's another really important thing to note, is that we are still a fair way out of we're still about 50 to 60 hours out, and so there are still a lot of variables that could change and could bring different conditions. So areas that may have gotten a lot of freezing rain in this model, this is the NAM 3K model, in case you can't see it up there, places that are getting a lot of this ice may not get as much ice. And so really what we see some of that ice start down here at around Friday at 15Z, right where I was talking about this area of low pressure at 1010 millibars. And then this continues to push up north, and you can see it kind of follows that path that I've laid out here for the ice storm warning risk map. Basically, if you're not in this, you're not likely to get very much ice, or if any. And if you're in it, it means you're going to get at least some ice to, however much you end up getting. We're going to switch over here to this is an MSLP, which is mean sea level pressure, and then also layered on top of that, these little darker areas with color are it's the 10 meter above ground level wind speeds. And so a lot of people have been calling this a blizzard or a potential blizzard, and this is really why I don't think this is going to be a blizzard, is because you need at least 35 mile per hour sustained winds in order to be considered a blizzard. And so as we progress through here, we see that low start to develop, and then we see the wind behind it start to pick up. And so we can take a look here through Nebraska and South Dakota, where a lot of the snow is going to be falling, and we're really only sitting at about 21 knots, which is just about like 23 miles per hour. It's like 23 to 25 miles per hour. So we're still 10 miles per hour short of that blizzard condition. Another condition of a blizzard, you have to meet both of these, is that visibility is reduced to 1/4 of a mile for up to 3 hours. And so without that 30 mile per hour wind gusts, I think that seeing blizzard-like conditions in these areas it's relatively unlikely, because you're also not going to get as much of that blowing snow that could cause that reduced visibility. Now, with blizzards, you don't need fresh snow. It could be snow that's already on the ground that's blowing around in these 35 mile per hour or up wind gusts. Sustained wind. And so blowing snow can also result in a blizzard warning, as well as fresh falling snow that reduces visibility. Now, if this low strengthens, if it deepens, we're only at 999 millibars right here at 6Z on Sunday, which is early in the morning on Sunday. I believe that's around midnight Central Time. So if this low continues to deepen, then yes, you could see enhanced wind speeds in those areas, but because the conditions aren't really right at the moment for this low to continue to deepen. So that being said, I don't believe that there are going to be stronger winds than what's being forecast right now. It's certainly possible, seeing as though we're still 40 to 60 hours out. But as of right now, I don't think that it's likely. And so that brings me to our next map, and that's going to be the snowfall estimates. So the main track of the snow is going to be this Nebraska up through Minnesota and into Canada. And so there's an area here between Nebraska and South Dakota, which I'm expecting will get between 12 and 18 inches. Now, that being said, I think this is on the low end. I think that we're looking closer to about a foot in this area and not on that upper end of 18 inches. I believe that this is going to be closer to that 12-inch mark. Then directly surrounding that, in parts of central Nebraska through parts of southern and then eastern South Dakota, and then this little corner here of North Dakota, as well as pushing into Wisconsin, we've got the 6 to 8 inch. The 8 to 12 inch, my bad. The 8 to 12 inch mark. And then the further north that you go, the closer to 8 inches that you're going to get. And the further south that you go, the closer to 12 inches that you're going to get. Really, as we see this low pressure system push to the north, it's going to weaken a bit. And with that, precipitation is going to drop off. You're also going to get some drier air kind of curled into this low pressure system. And with that, it's going to basically make the snow much drier, much finer, and so more of it falls. It's not going to accumulate as much as it would if it was like that large, very moist, puffy snow. Then we've got the 6 to 8 inch band surrounding here. Parts of Colorado are into this. Now, there is snow going on in Colorado right now that I'm not including in this. I'm mainly looking at the bulk of this storm system as that low deepens and then moves to the north. And then surrounding that, we have this very thin band of 3 to 6. So really, you're going to get a dusting to 3 inches, stretching from the upper peninsula of Michigan through Wisconsin and then down through Kansas. up through Colorado, and then Wyoming, and then North and South Dakota. And that's going to go from a dusting to 3 inches, transitioning to that 6 to 8 inch mark very quickly. There's not a very large amount of area that's in this 3 to 6 inch mark. Now we're going to go to the blizzard warning outlook for the next 72 hours. Because that wind isn't there, I cannot say that it's likely that we're going to have a blizzard warning. And so I do have this low risk area through Nebraska and South Dakota here, because those are the areas that, if that low pressure does deepen, these are the areas that would be affected by that the most. But like I said, I don't think that's incredibly likely. Now, before we move on, I do want to take a look at this. This is put out by NOAA, their communications I guess department. This is the eye of Dorian, and they are just basically counting down the some of the breathtaking images that came out of weather this year. Now, not only was Dorian breathtaking, it was also devastating to places like the Bahamas, because it did stall out as a Category 5 over that. But I thought that this eye was fascinating. There are all those clouds in the middle that are just constantly being hurled out, and you can really see them, being forced into the eye wall there. So I thought that was just a really breathtaking image. But we're going to move on here to temperatures. So this is the 2-meter above ground level temperature, which is usually where temperatures are taken. Very, very mild here in the eastern part of the country. Temperatures in the 60s. In Indiana, pushing almost to the 70s here through the south, and then the closer you get to the Gulf of Mexico, the further into the 70s that you get. The West Coast is experiencing cooler temperatures than they're used to at this time, hovering right around the 50s, the mid 50s, and then especially in the mountains, you get down into the single-digit temperatures. But we've got 25 degrees here, and then I saw 9 degrees earlier. Rocky Mountains, cold as usual. Then up here in the north, we do see some of that cold air that's kind of setting in, as well as this little kind of cold front here that's pushing through, bringing some cooler temperatures in Iowa and Wisconsin and Kansas and Missouri. The Northeast experiencing some cooler temperatures, 24 degrees here. I believe that's Portland, either that or this 30 degree here is Portland. Boston here at 34. We're going to proceed forward here, and then you can see this area of, I guess, expanded 30-degree temperatures expands even further as this low starts to develop, and it's going to pull really cold air here from Canada to the west of the system, and that's going to deepen and push to the north. We're getting into daytime hours now, so that really pushes to the north. And one thing that's going on is we have these two cold fronts that kind of set up. Now, I believe one of these is going to be a dry line and the other is going to be a cold front, but we really see a stark temperature difference behind both of these. And they will progress through the area. They'll progress through the Missouri, Arkansas, Texas area throughout the day on Saturday and Sunday, mainly Saturday night. And then we also can see a very defined warm front set up here. And so this is the warm sector of the storm. They're mostly going to be seeing rain. I don't expect any snow, seeing as though these temperatures are still well above freezing for these areas. But we're going to take a look at the Storm Prediction Center. They do have a marginal risk here for this Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, this really small portion of Missouri here, and Arkansas. And now the reason for this is we can take a look here at the storms that begin to set up, and they're going to push into I actually went a little too far there. They're going to push it through Oklahoma into Arkansas and into Louisiana. We see some pop-up storms up in front of it and some drizzle. It's mostly going to be drizzle. It's not going to be anything too severe. But if we take a look at a sounding here, we do see a little bit of Cape. The most unstable air right now showing 395 joules per kilogram here. We also do see a fair amount of wind shear. Wind, the closer to the surface that you go, is blowing in from the south and even the southeastern areas, and then the further north that you go, it really starts pushing from the southwest. And so what we're looking at here is we're looking at a day that's not very unstable. There may be, because of this shear here, there's, I would say, a small risk for tornadoes. In fact, the possible hazard type has marginal tornado here. I don't think it's super likely because we are very limited on Cape here. Um, because the yeah, and because the this is the wet bulb temperature here, this like blue, this like light blue line, because that is so high up and below the freezing line so high up, I don't think that hail is going to be that big of an issue either. I think that we're mostly looking at a wind event here, because basically what's going to happen is rain precipitation from this area up here where the air is saturated, it is going to fall, and because it's so dry in this area right here, that rain is going to be evaporated again, and it may not even hit the ground. It might hit the ground, but it also might not. And because of that, evaporation is a cooling process. You need to take in energy in order to evaporate water. So because there's going to be more evaporation in this layer, it's going to cool the air down within that layer, and that's going to increase downdrafts, which all in all is going to increase the wind in this system. And so I think that we're mainly looking at a wind event here, and we're not really looking at much of a hail or a tornado event, but I wouldn't rule out a couple of isolated tornadoes and a couple of isolated hail spots. And this will continue to push off to the west, once again giving a marginal risk for that area there. And so another thing that's going to kind of stifle these thunderstorms is the cloud cover. So without sun, you're not going to get any warming, or very much warming at least on the ground, which is really going to limit the instability. And because of that, we saw that Cape was very low in value. And this is precipitable water too. There's a decent amount of water within this. About closer to these storms, it's going to be about just over an inch, between an inch and an inch and a half. The closer you get to inch and a half, the less likely hail is. The closer you are to an inch, the more likely hail is. And so that's really why I'm looking at this precipitable water here. The precipitable water is at a decent level for hail, but once again, because that dew point temperature, that wet bulb temperature fell below freezing so high up in the atmosphere, there's a lot of area between that level and the ground that hail could melt in. So I don't expect a whole lot of hail from this system. And then we can take a look at Cape again here. This is mixed layer Cape, and mixed layer Cape really maxes out between 200 and 300 joules per kilogram here in Oklahoma, and then closer to 200, actually close to 400 joules per kilogram in Oklahoma, but then here in Arkansas, we're really on the low end at about 200 to 300 joules per kilogram. Moving over to the surface-based Cape, we're still seeing that same sort of thing, 400 to 500 joules per kilogram in areas, but you really want to have higher Cape values if you want to see severe weather. So severe weather isn't very likely. It's mostly going to be a wind threat, which I believe is why they've got that marginal risk for severe storms. But anyway, I hope that you guys all enjoyed. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and stay safe in this upcoming winter event. Thank you all and have a great day.